Hey there, it's Rob Folia, author of Real Estate Reset, as well as real estate agent with Folia Properties at Keller Williams Realty here in Nashville. And wanted to come to you today with part two of our series of Does Buying an Investment Property Still Make Sense? As a reminder, we are doing these videos to educate, not picking on any specific property, although we are using real properties as examples. And we're going to be talking about the numbers as it relates to getting a mortgage, getting a loan with that the purchase of that property. So if you're paying cash, it's going to be a little different. If you're, maybe renting out a property you live in currently and already have a mortgage and your rate is not what rates are right now, it's going to be a little different as well. But without further ado, let's jump in, let's get started, and let's look at a property. So I've got one pulled up already, ready to go. I have not plugged in numbers for it yet. So we're going to be doing this live, although I have a general idea based on some things I'm seeing already. But I've got a property pulled up that a client of mine actually sent me. I sent it to her because she's on automatic updates, when certain properties hit the market. And this one, checked the boxes. So she sent it to me and she goes, Rob, does this make sense? So I have looked at some things on the surface. I haven't dug super deep in here, but I figured it's worth checking out. So what we've got here is 361 Peabody in Clarksville. This is a 4-unit building. So this is not just a single family home that we're thinking of plugging in and turning into a rental. This is a 4-unit building. Um, Shout out before I forget to the House Connection. Thank you so much for having this listed. And again, this is not my listing. This is their listing, but I figured it was worth putting up here and just running through the numbers together. So does this make sense as a rental? We're going to need to look at a few things. First, yeah, again, obviously, we're not walking through the property, but let's just get an idea of condition. Looks like it's in good shape. Looks, from what I'm seeing right here, I mean, very much move-in ready, turnkey. Um, ready to go. I mean, obviously, this is not the entire property because it's a 4-unit, and this is not 4 units. This might be I think it says here in the comments, yeah, unit one, no lease, it's empty. Might be unit one, but it does say here semi updated turnkey, all brick quadplex, professionally managed. 3 of the 4 units leased. It's updated paint and flooring in units 2, 3, and 4, brand new water heater in unit one. To me on the surface, this looks like it could be a good property. It's rented out pretty steadily here as a 2 bed. All of them are 2 bed, 1.5 bath units, all rented out for 950 to close to 1,000 a month. So you can expect, I would imagine, about $4,000 per month on this property, especially with the way rents are going. Maybe 3,900 a month, somewhere in that range. But let's take a look at some numbers. Does this make sense to rent out, assuming that it's turnkey, assuming that you don't have to go through and fix anything with it? Let's see. So just plugging it in, and we're gonna work off of the number they're asking, the 585, just like we did on our first video. And again, if you haven't checked that video out, go check it out because we walked through a single family, one that would typically be in my portfolio, one that I would be interested in buying. But let's take a look at this. So we're gonna say we're putting 25% down on this property because when you're buying a multifamily, I believe it's required. I have yet to see a lender, at least I haven't seen one in a long time, that will do a multifamily with less than 25% down. But let's walk through here some things. So interest rates have ticked down a little bit this year, at least from where they had peaked around in May. But they're still high sixes. That means if you were, when I see that on the Freddie Mac website here, that typically tells me that you're going to get a rate somewhere around that number, maybe 1/4%, somewhere in that range, higher than what you're seeing. So I would imagine if you were getting a loan today and you were an owner occupant, that you might be looking at a low sevens as a rate. Now, we're not talking about owner occupancy here. We're talking about investment properties. Investment loans they tend to be about 1% higher than an owner occupant. So if you're looking in the low sevens as an owner occupant, you're probably going to be in the low eights. So we're going to plug in. I'm just going to put in 8.25. I'm not a lender. Don't quote me that that's today's rate or anything like that. But that's about what I would expect if I was getting a loan. Now, let's look at a couple of things. Annual taxes, 3550. So 3550 a year. Let's plug that in. Let's go through and get rid of PMI because you're not going to have PMI when you're putting 25% down, and homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance. Now, this might surprise some people, but because if you were buying a single family home that was 3,770 square feet, getting insurance on it, I mean, I am no insurance expert, but I would imagine if you have excellent credit and there's no warning signs on the property that's going to raise your insurance, you're probably going to be somewhere around, I don't know, 120 a month, call it 1,500 a year, something like that. And the reality is that when you have a multifamily property, your risk is higher. Not only do you have somebody else living in your property, you have four somebody else's living in your property for this example. Not only do you have that, you have four kitchens, you have four ovens, you have four, just there's four units with risk potential. So your insurance is not going to be just $1,550 a year, or $1,500 a year if that's what you would have for a single family of that size. Your insurance is probably going to be, if I'm guessing on this, and if one of my insurance friends wants to correct me, please do. But your insurance is probably going to be about 3 grand a year. That's a guess. I mean, it might be a little higher, might be a little lower, but somewhere in that range. So just off the top, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, you're looking at $3,842 a year roughly. So we'll call it 3,840, just easy math. And I've got a spreadsheet pulled up. So we're gonna actually plug in our numbers here, and we're gonna say, hey, at 585, putting at 25% down, which I might need a calculator since it tells me the opposite, it tells me the down payment here. So let's see, 585 times, let's say 0.75 for 38,750, we're going to say is the equity balance. For 38,750. So you got a 25% equity percentage. Market rental amount. This is where it gets a little tricky. I mean, we could go into Rentometer like we did in the last video, which if you didn't check that out, go back and look at it. Zillow can have some good information, but since this one is rented already, I'm gonna assume that this unit one is very similar to units 2, 3, and 4. Again, this is very surface level, guys. I would do a lot more information in this if I was considering buying this property myself. But let's just say 995. Say you can get the high end for unit one as well, and the others are 945. Oops, nine. Let's just do this again. 995 plus 995 plus 945 plus 945. You got 3880 a month. 3880 is your rental amount. 1% rule. You can see right away it's more like 2/3 of a percent. Which if this is your first time seeing one of my videos, the 1% rule used to be an amazing, easy, simple way of looking at a rental property to say if the rental amount is 1% of the purchase price, then it makes sense as a rental. That's very hard to find nowadays, just because of inflation on property values and how rental inflation is not kept up with it. That's very hard to find. I'm typically very happy if I'm in the 0.7s to 0.8s, depending on what cash flow looks like. Um, but here's where it gets interesting. So we said 3880 is our rent, is our prospective rent. We said 3840 is our mortgage. So I mean, we can tell right off the bat that this is not something that's going to be a cash cow for us. There's no HOA. We're not even talking about a vacancy or a repair reserve, which we can get into in another video. But right away you can see PITI minus 10% of a property manager, you're in the whole $350 a month. So right away, this would be something I'd say, nope, not going to do it, not going to make sense. Obviously, we could play around with numbers, because if you had, say, more than 25% to put down, say you had 200 grand to put down, you just sold an investment, you're putting down 200 grand, you have 34% down, to put down here. Nothing else changing other than that. We're at 34, 38 a month. And so I mean, automatically, let's just call it 3440, and let's call this 385. I mean, you can see you're in the you're in the profit for a whole $50 a month at that instance. But we had to put down another, gosh, I didn't keep track of my numbers, but put another 9% down, whatever that is, 50, 60 something grand. um to me, that's not making sense. And I'm bringing this up because I'm a big proponent of real estate investing. I think real estate investing is a phenomenal way, an amazing way to grow wealth just to grow your wealth, and then through real estate, through purchasing something by putting a percentage of it down and having somebody else pay off the balance for you. I mean, that's basically what you're doing here when you've got a mortgage, 25% down, 20%, 35, whatever you're putting down. And you're borrowing the rest of the money at a 7, 8, 9, whatever percent rate. But if you're buying it correctly, this number is carrying you through while somebody is paying it down. And then over time, whether rates drop and you can refinance, or market rent goes up, over time you're going to see that this bottom line increase. Now, $50 a month to me is not enough. Like, I'm easily passing on this, because when I'm seeing that I'm going to have to put a $200,000 investment down to make $50 a month, zero, I have zero interest in that. On top of the fact that the reality is, this line 8 is not guaranteed. 3880 is not guaranteed every month, but what is guaranteed that I'm going to have to pay every month is this 3440 in this instance. And so, like, even I'm managing it, if I'm managing it myself, it's starting to make a little more sense. I'm starting to say, hey, maybe it does make sense to do this, but I don't want to manage it myself. I don't want to deal with while it doesn't happen often, I don't want to deal with that random phone call, that the HVAC's out, because that always happens at the worst time, by the way. It doesn't always happen at 3 in the morning. It usually doesn't happen at 3 in the morning, by the way, but it usually happens when you have a day full of meetings with your day job, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, my tenant is cold. It's 20 degrees outside and the heat's out. Or, the water heater busted and everything is wet, and we got to deal with it. Like, if you have a property manager, that's one phone call that takes you 10 minutes. And the property manager is responsible now for taking care of it. Whereas, and to me, that's just worth it. So anyway, I don't want to get off sidetracked and talk about property management. I could do that in another video as well. But here you can see, just off the cuff, off the top, this is why, to me, this doesn't make sense if you're getting a loan. If you're not getting a loan, again, that's a whole nother discussion. And maybe that should be the subject of the next video here, talking about return on investment, and just evaluating it from, just a purchase amount compared to what your cash flow is going to see, and that from a real estate standpoint, does that make sense? And we can get into that in another video. But as always, guys, I'm going to just cut it off here, just because I think we've probably hit a threshold of, hey, this is good information on this property. But thank you for tuning in. If you have questions, any advice, any comments, advice for the community, I should say, drop it in the comments here. I know everybody would love to learn from each other. I think that is what is this is all about in terms of life, but also in terms of learning about real estate investment. So feel free to drop any comments in the excuse me, drop any advice, questions, or anything in the comments. Love to hear from y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see y'all next time.